Picked the wrong week to quit sniffing glue.
Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday. It's the gateway of the weekend. Perfect time to start a new model. No, I know. I'm filling in the rest of the week with what I'm hoping will be a quick but fun build of the Sky Captain robot. Now, this was something that started as a whim, and as a whim it took off and became real because of the singular talent of Jeffrey Fink. Now, you see, I know that I use him a lot. I drop his name a lot. But he's 100% worth the hype. I said to Jeffrey, have you ever seen this movie, Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow? It's one of my guilty favorites. I just love the aesthetic of it. And he said no, he'd never seen it. So he went out and looked it up. I said, you would like it. It's 50s ray guns and robots. There's a lot of great designs in there. And he said, okay, I'll check it out. And then, couple 3 days later, seemed like less than a week, he coughs up this perfect rendition of the robots that attack the city at the beginning. I won't spoil the whole movie for you, but go out and check it out if you haven't seen it yourself. I think you'll like it. Check your brain at the door. It's a throwback. It was largely done all green screen and CGI and sepia tones. It's Jude Law, Gwyneth Paltrow, Giovanni Ribisi, and a couple of surprises that I think you would like. But it's got this beautiful aesthetic to it. And he's got these lumbering, these are like right out of Max Fleischer Superman cartoon type of robots. So he basically came back with this thing fully formed. And not only is it fully formed, it's also jointed. It's wonderfully jointed, and so you can be posed. Now, it's not going to be something that I am going to keep jointed. It's jointed in such that I can pose it, but I'm going to pose it and then freeze it in one position. I'm going to pose it and then glue it. I'm not making it as a action figure that I can, go back and change the pose on. One thing I am going to do, I am going to light up the visor, because why not? You've got this wonderful big chest cavity that we worked out a way that you could put a light in a battery inside there. 9-volt if you want to. There's ample room for a 9-volt battery in there. But I think I'm going to use one of the smaller watch battery or pin what are they called? Button cells. That's it. Button cell batteries that I could tuck in here and make this all one piece with the battery, because the battery holder has the switch on it. And I can make a single LED that goes in here and lights up his head. Now, this turned out so wonderfully that in the near future, I don't know exactly when, but in the near future, I'm going to print another one that's easily half again as big. This is about a foot tall all put together. I want to do one that's like 18 inches, maybe even a 20-inch one, 24-inch one. My printer can handle that big. It's just a question of time and resin. But I love this design. I'm going to have great fun with it. The first thing I need to do is put some primer on all these parts because I want them to be, this is a very simple paint job. It's like a one color. It's probably going to all be gunmetal with maybe some chrome highlights or something on it. But I want to go ahead and get a gray primer on it so that we're halfway to gunmetal without having to make the gunmetal do all the work. Plus, because I don't know exactly what areas are going to be visible once I've got this glued up, I want to go ahead and prime up the spots all around, and then I can just glue it in place, and then once it's frozen in that position, I can go back in with more paint and paint it that way. So let's quickly take everything apart. Now I'm also going to have to go and hobby shop and see if I could, or maybe even Lowe's, to get some material for the pins. These are styrene tubes. I have some brass or aluminum tubes. I might want something solid, so I think I may look for a solid dowel rod, a wooden dowel rod. That's something that's solid the whole way through. The only other way I can think of doing that would be to pack that full of epoxy sculpt to fill it in, but I don't know if that's necessarily what I want to do either. I didn't want to print these pins because to me, printing a perfect cylinder or a perfect flat square, if you can do it with scratch building material, you're going to get a better result. This is going to come out smooth. It's not going to cost, I mean, this is fractions of a penny. Resin is kind of expensive, plus it takes time to print. I would just rather use the dimensionally stable stuff. So I'm going to take all of these pieces and parts apart, and then I'm going to get a coat of primer on them, and then I'll run out to the store and see if I can find a wooden dowel that is the same size. Take all of these apart, and the arms are the same way. Now the shoulders are the elbows are jointed. The shoulders will fit, but they're kind of like the hips. They need to be glued in one place, and once I've got the legs and the body kind of situated, then I'll know what kind of position the arms are going to swing into. Those will be the easiest ones to figure out. But let's get a coat of primer on all of these, and we'll go from there. Good morning, it's Friday. It's the last work day of the week. It may be the last work day on our friend here. Who knows? Yesterday went really weird. I'll just offer that up for everybody and not tell you why. But I ended up coming home a little bit later than normal. Put a silver coat on everything because I had silver in the airbrush from another project that I am also working on that is off camera, and so I had silver, and so I put a silver base coat on everything. I'm going to do a gunmetal over top of this because the robots in the movie were much darker. They were steel. They weren't bright aluminum. They were more like steel. So gunmetal is probably closer to that, although I probably could use some of my old acrylic metal colors of dark aluminum and such. I may dig these out. But what I want to do right now is get my pose down and get it locked in. I spent a little bit of time this morning fixing the joint, or the pins. That's the word I'm looking for, the pins. I was using, oh hush you. I was using these aluminum, bits of aluminum tubing and styrene tubing because it is the right diameter, but it has the obnoxious tendency to have the ends open. So I cut some of these using a punch, and that's basically just a styrene circle that is the same diameter as the end of the tube. So I was just gluing them off, gluing them on the ends of the pins, and I end up with something like, oh, I've got two more to do because I've got the elbows to worry about, but I've got the leg pins all done, so I wanted to show you those. But I end up with something like this, and I used brass because I had some scrap brass that is the right size, but I just closed off both sides, and I can go ahead and, like I said, this is not going to be a posable thing. Once I've determined the actual pose, I'm going to glue it in place, but this is going to allow me to have that flexibility that I'm looking for. But I've got two more to do for the elbows, so and once the legs are and the hips are in position, the arms will kind of take care of themselves. It's going to be doing a bit of a Sasquatch, Bigfoot pose, where he's just kind of caught in mid-stride. And then, of course, I've got an LED for his head. But what I'm doing now is taking these styrene tubes that I've got that are the right length and cleaning up the edges on them. I got to sand them down a little bit because they're a fraction too big or too long. But I'll sand them down just a wee bit, and that'll take care of those. And I shouldn't have the same issues I had with gluing the styrene end caps on these that I did with the metal. Since this is all the same material, I should be able to just put a drop of the 10x or the MEK on there and take care of those. So let me go ahead and make up these last two joints, and then we'll start worrying about his pose. Now see, that's the right length now because it comes out proper on both sides, and I'll just put a cap over that. It'll look like that when we're done. Alrighty, it took some doing and some thinking and some pondering and some re-gluing, but I think I got the pose the way I want it, and I've got the joints locked in now. I've not got the arms put on simply because it's going to be easier to paint and weather the body and the arms separately, and because that's a big old sloppy joint there, I can put that on way late in the process and still be happy with that. But we've got the stance, the important thing, the step. I had the step way too wide the first time, and he looked a bit like that "Keep on Truckin'" poster for all you oldsters with the Mr. Natural on there. You might remember the "Keep on Truckin' poster. It was a little, it was, you know, one leg bent out, one leg way out in front. That's what he was looking like, and I needed to tone that back. So what I've got is a more, and I checked the clip from the movie, and they did take fairly wide steps, but not gargantuan. So I think what I wanted to do was kind of keep the length of the foot, so he's doing heel to toe here. The toe of this foot lines up with the heel of that one, and I wanted him to be facing bending down, looking down at the ground because he is so tall. Jeff has informed me that at this scale he's about 172 scale at this size, so that's going to go on something like that. But now I'm in a good place where I can start doing some painting and some weathering. And I'm glad I checked the reference on the film, because I presumed these were like, you know, shiny new robots. And no, they've got rust, they've got oil, all the fun weathering, you know, grease coming down where the joints are. That's going to be fun. Now, I've only really got today to do it, so I don't want to go so nuts with it, but I can start having some fun. I've checked the battery. Oh, hush you. I'm going to turn you off. I don't need you right now. I've played with the light. Now, this is a red LED, but I'm going to be putting a white LED in there to give you the look. Now, because red is just too Cylon, and B, in the movie it's more of a warm white. Well, of course everything in the movie is warm because it's got that big sepia tone going over all of it. So I'm going to find me a warm white LED to put in there, and I'm going to try to design this in such a way that I can put the head and the top plate and kind of join all this together so that when it pulls out, it pulls out all at one time. Okay, I've put together the simplest of all lighting. This is a two coin battery holder with a built-in switch on it, and all I did was solder a LED to it. I am insulating both legs of it, and I'm going to poke it up into this styrene tube, and then I'm going to poke it like this. Let me see if I can do this on camera. I want to push the LED out through the hole like that. Yes. So now we have a styrene tube with a LED on it, and now I can take this whole thing and glue it up into here. And now we have our death beam coming out of our robot head. Now all I'm going to do on the inside here is take a little bit of epoxy and then jam this up into it and kind of glue it in place, and then the whole thing drops down into the chest piece, which is over here. I can drop the whole thing into the chest piece, and when I want to light it up, I simply open it up, hit this switch, and put it back in. Nothing too fancy. No reason to go all remote control Bluetooth on it. It's a simple light. And for as often as I will be having it turned on, I can open it up, turn it on, put the lid back in place. And then we'll be ready to do some painting. It's lunchtime. I need to, I'm only going to head this afternoon to paint this thing, so it's going to go pretty quickly. It's all one color. Once I get it starting to get it weathered, I think everything will go from there. But now I just need to clean up the soldering iron and all of the stuff that's in the way here. Clean workplace is a happy workplace, and a happy workplace is a happy modeler. And there he is with the module, the lighting module in. Maybe tough to see. There you go. With the overhead light on them, but that's given me the right kind of, the right intensity of light. So now, and I'm double thinking. I am rethinking whether I want to put the arms on before I paint or not. I still think it'd be easier to paint without them on. So as long as I know what position they're going to be in, that's fine. And I'm letting this, this is the water weld, the JB Weld 2-part epoxy putty. It sets up really quickly. And time is of the essence today because I don't have a lot of time to be waiting for epoxies and glues to dry. I'm sorry, paint dries, glues cure. I've got to get that through my head. Every time I say I'm waiting for glue to dry, I'm waiting for glue to cure. I'm waiting for paint to dry. It's like the old tube versus rod thing. If it's solid, it's a rod. If it's hollow, it's a tube. Have to remember that kind of stuff. So now we're ready to do some painting. Okay, so I've used the, I guess it wasn't the jet exhaust, I think it was the burnt iron or dark aluminum on the metal colors. I used those to throw in a shading, a pre-shading on all of the parts here. I'm going to let this dry. I'm going to go grab a lunch, I think, and then come back and hit it with a highlight of a silver to bring out the highlight, or the highlights. That's why you would hit it with a highlight coat, duh. And then I can start putting in some oil drips and some weathering and all of that. But we'll give this a good chance to dry over an hour or so and come back, hit it with the highlights. Like I said, it was going to be a real simple finish. Alrighty, I've just gone over our little friend here with a coat of the, I think this is flat aluminum. Flat aluminum Tamiya's, and that's, see, because of the pre-shading that I did with the darker metals, I just had to do a tiny bit of highlighting here over the, hit the rivets and all that kind of stuff, and we're all about as good as done here. I'm going to put in some oil drips and spills. I've got my no, I'm not going to put any sooty brown. Where are my black wash? We'll get that out. Oil stains, that's what I want. There's one called petrol spills that I may try, but I'm just going to slather some of that into joints and let it dribble down. And then we'll be done. Alrighty, I'm just having fun with weathering now. I got the arms glued in at their appropriate pose. And I am just slopping some of these different weathering paints on now. Obviously, I'm figuring out my story as I'm doing this, and these robots are several stories tall. These are huge things. So at 172 scale, you imagine a 6-foot tall guy comes maybe up to here, up to the top of the ankle. So we're going to see a lot of the weathering and a lot of the dirt is going to happen on the feet kind of naturally. It's where they're kicking through debris and all of that. So that's where the majority of your dirt is going to be in. And obviously, the higher up you go, the less chance of things running into it. Now, I am putting some weathering and some of this spilled oil and all that into the joints here. That's where you want to keep your robot lubricated. Obviously, you don't want your joints to seize up. So some of these are more petrol spills and things like that more than they are, let's call it damage. Now, if you're also a 10-story tall robot, you're liable to get shot at by our friend the Sky Captain. So you might have some damage across the top that up till now has looked only like printing errors. But you know, I'm going to turn those printing errors or support errors into bullet hits, because we've got several right back here. So all of these pockmarks are happening because of the way when you take something, particularly a chrome finish or a metallic finish, how that wants to accentuate every little scratch and blemish that you might have from your printing that you hadn't sanded or cleaned up. Well, I'm going to go back in with the black Tamiya, and I'm just going to make those bullet hits, because Sky Captain does do a strafing run on these guys as they are marching down the street. They get the funniest looks from everyone they meet. Hey, hey, they're the monkeys. But now I'm making sure that right in these creases, right in here, is where all of that soot and dirt is going to settle. And I'm thinking I might even want to, even though something as space age as this really wouldn't have it on there quite yet, I'm going to put some rust on it, just to give it that little snatch of a red color. I'm also going down the panel lines on the parts, because that's where your grease and your oil would tend to settle. It would tend to settle in the the panel lines, the lines between your sheet metal. That's where your rust is going to happen. That's where all of your dirt's going to settle. You would think something as big as this, if it, you put it out in the rain, it's going to wash off some of the high spots, but it might not get into every little crook and nanny, as they used to say. And I'm going to do like the inside of the fingers. I've decided to age this up a little bit more than I had originally intended, because when I saw went back and looked at the video clip again, it was fairly well aged. Now I'm going to take some black here, and actually I think I'm going to do the pelvis part here more of a black. This accordion bit on his hips, I do like that as almost as a rubbery gaskety type of thing. And go ahead and paint that whole thing in black. I'll spin him around and do the front. That gives him a little bit of well-needed contrast here from all the metallic. Actually, if nothing else, it's kind of echoing a little bit of RoboCop look. So, everything influences everything else. There. Okay, now let's put some more. Get the water out here where I can reach it. Put some more weathering in his. This was the tough part to get paint down into, so I don't have any problem trying to slop it with a little bit of the weathering. And when I don't talk about Mr. Compressor for a while, he gets jealous and has to speak up. There's a lot of Iron Giant in this. There's a lot of Fleischer's, mechanical monsters or mechanical men, which is kind of a really early predecessor to the Transformers, as far as these are robots that turn into planes. And even in Sky Captain, these guys, and when they have lost their fight, the arms turn into wings, and the rockets in the feet kind of blast the whole thing up like it were a rocket or a plane. So, like I said, everything influences everything else. And I'm just going in here at this point and darkening down. Oh, that was a mistake. Well, not a mistake, but something that needed to be cleaned up. The brush split, and instead of painting in the crack, I ended up painting on both sides of the crack. So this is weathering up nicely. I'm going to slop some paint for a few more minutes and then make an assessment of whether I'm done or not. I don't remember if it's Canon or not. I don't think it is, but I put a little pop of color on here. I just painted the tops of the antennas with a nice glossy red ball on there. I guess I'm still thinking of Amber's Lollipop, but just having that nice retro red on there, I think, is a nice touch. Now, in the movie, I will admit to you that in the movie there is a skull and I don't know whether it's a skull and crossbones or just a skull in his insignia there, that in the perfect world would either be sculpted in or exist as a decal. This is not that perfect world, and I don't know whether I've made it clear or not at this point, but this is a test model. I think I said yesterday that I liked it so much that I'm going to reprint it much larger, and on the much larger one, that's where I'm going to be spending a lot of time massaging every last piece and making sure that the seams are taken care of, and the printing boogers are taken care of, and all, make sure the surfaces are nice and sanded smooth. That really isn't the mission statement for this kit. This is more of a proof of concept, I think would be the term. But I think it turned out nicely for a 2-day build. And let me go ahead and turn the headlight on. Pop it back down. There you go. There is your mechanical monster. I've got a few more minutes yet. I don't have to stop working. I'm just putting some washes on it now. I'm just going to continue to work some of these details. I was glad to see that I was mistaken about these being shiny and new. So that gives me a little bit more leeway. And you have to wonder, how much does leeway? But it gives me more leeway in how I'm going to interpret this particular beastie. Little pops of brownish color. I've got some of the oil spills. I've got some of the red rust. Just enough in here to kind of bring it into that spectrum so that you don't think that this is a black and white piece. It does have some color, and of course the red of the balls on the top of the antenna. Sit them down like that. Now imagine an army of about 20 more of those marching down the street, and all being 7 stories tall. You get it makes quite an imposing phalanx. Just trying to see make sure I'm doing this somewhat evenly. I don't want to have forgotten like the entire inside of an arm and realize that everything else is nicely weathered except that bit. Yeah. And that's going to do it for this week's, or this couple of days quickie build. Hope you liked the robot from Sky Captain. Check out Sky Captain if you haven't seen it. It's a neat little film. Won't change the world, but it's a neat little film. This will make a great addition to my robot collection. And thank you again, Mr. Jeffrey Fink, for coming up with the files that will allow me to print this out. I'm going to be doing this again much larger because I really dig this design. But that's going to do it for this week. I hope you don't mind the shortness of it, the brevity, the very weeness, if you will, of this video. So until next week, when I'm going to be working on another couple of figures. I've got figures stocked up. Believe me, they're backing up, and if I don't start going through them, that's all I'm going to have. So I'm going to have another couple of figures I'm going to give you that I'm going to work on simultaneously next week. They are related in theme, and that's why I'm going to call them the Olsen twins. So until next week, y'all be safe, be smart, be nice to each other, and be back next time.